It's Wellness Wednesday. It's Wellness Wednesday. And somebody asked on Friday to do a video about real stoicism versus fake stoicism. I'm going to amend this to the classical philosophical movement of stoicism versus how stoicism is used in colloquial speech. Now, somebody also asked to do a video about the childlike is important to find your center, and I've written that down as well, one thing at a time, because I do think that talking about actual stoicism in this bad, crazy kind of world right now is important, okay? Because stoicism has had a resurgence of late because, Marcus Aurelius ruled during the time of, I believe this was the Justinian plague, but also a lot of wars. Like it really surged with COVID because it's like, okay, who can help us through these times? Dude who dealt with the plague. Okay. So let's do help support this channel and get into it. Help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who uses but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to get into all of Stoicism in a 20 to 30 minute video. There's disagreements within Stoicism. There's nuance within the Stoics. What Epictetus, or Epictetus if you want to call him, said versus what Marcus Aurelius said. Because there are different natures, right? The idea of the telos in Stoicism is the telos basically means the ultimate practical goal or end is basically let me back up. There's some, the telos is one of these principles that you have to understand Stoicism, okay? There's this idea of eudaimonia. What? Gesundheit, right. It's this idea of a specific kind of fulfilled happiness, not hedonism, which is a temporary pleasure of the body that is bad for you in the long term. Eudaimonia is this idea of happiness as fulfillment, a well-lived life, right? That is the ultimate goal of Stoicism. Happiness, a particular kind of happiness. And that is the big difference in what Stoicism actually is versus Stoicism feel nothing, right? When they talk about hegemonic masculinity and Stoicism, we think of, right, like scouting all the time, no feeling at all. That's not Stoicism. That's not. The Stoics had feelings. Emotional repression, which is what Stoicism has come to mean in these discussions of, toxic masculinity. It wasn't a repression of emotions. No, Stoics felt happiness. Stoics felt sadness. Stoics felt anger. Stoics felt everything. It was about it not taking you over, right? It was about avoiding the hedonism, which is like in the moment, just feel maximum. And it's not even pleasure at that point. It's just avoid, right? It's distract, avoid, be a glutton, abuse your body. And so this idea of the practical goal or end, the telos, is in living in accordance as in concordant, meaning in harmony with both the internal harmony and external harmony, which meant not being in constant conflict with people. And that's why Stoics seem chill. They're not spoiling for a fight, which again is the opposite of what we see as Stoicism modern. Just constantly, I'm tough. I feel nothing, right? And the people who claim to feel nothing are living lives of constant conflict, or there is conflict around them because they're not feeling their feelings. If you're not feeling your feelings, you're not living in accordance with your nature, which is sort of a ish translation into English from the Greek concept. But you're not living in harmony with your nature or in concordance with your nature. You're also not living in concordance with nature, your surroundings, right? Now, this is not necessarily being agreeable. Philosophers are not agreeable people. But what it is sort of taking things and separating the immediate moral charge from them. The idea that most actions, most decisions are amoral. They are not moral, they are not immoral. They're amoral. People aren't coming at you, right? You having one Starbucks coffee with, oh God, a disposable cup will not destroy the planet in and of itself, right? There's moderation that has to take place, which again separated it from hedonism. Hedonism is temporary pleasure without purpose. Eudaimonia is pleasure with purpose, or happiness in accordance with your purpose. And you'll hear a lot of woo-woo self-help things talking about being on purpose, living in accordance with your purpose. But there's a better way to explain that, and that's that idea of fulfillment, right? Feeling like you're thriving, feeling like you're on the right track. And a big part of feeling like you're on the right track is your view of the world and not catastrophizing or having toxic optimism, but also doing things that you feel matter. And that idea of mattering, right, is really important to Stoicism. And this is where people tend to butcher it. This is when you, don't try to be happy. The Stoics saw happiness obviously as an end goal, right? But you don't, you're not happy they're not happy for the sake of something. You're happy. It's a result, right? But if you just go, be happy, well, how does that work? Much like a lot of the other good things in life, things like forgiveness, things like peace. You can't just go happy, peace, forgiveness. There's a process, right? It is ongoing discipline and reflection and accountability that allows you that chill. Not an absence of feeling. You actually feel happy. And virtue, not the modern version of it, the idea of Greek virtue was essential for happiness. It was the only thing you needed to be happy. There were other things, right? And that's the thing. If you are living basically consistently, if these are your stated values, this is the way you act, and your actions are in accordance with your values, you will have that fulfilled happiness. If you state these virtues, but live not in accordance with them, well, then you're not going to be happy. That makes a lot of common sense, right? But setting those virtues, setting rational virtues, achievable virtues, because the Stoics believe that virtue is the perfection of human rationality. Stoicism is all about your expectations. And it doesn't mean you don't try to achieve anything. God, no. It means you set reasonable expectations and really are honest with yourself, am I doing this for temporary gratification or as a means to an end? Or am I doing this act because this act is a virtuous one, meaning not, oh, it's altruistic, and no. Altruism is a very different concept that came along much, much later. The idea of altruism did not exist when Stoic philosophy, altruism as we understand it today, that was much, much later. The idea was, I know myself, I can regulate myself, I have self-discipline. And I guess we'd call it more integrity now, that these are my values, I act in accordance with my values. And these are my expectations, they're reasonable. And so I am pushing myself enough to have fulfillment, but not setting expectations so reasonable that I'm going to be so unreasonable that I'm going to be perpetually miserable. My happiness is not based on external forces that can control me. My happiness is based on my self-understanding and self-regulation. That is Stoicism. And it's a cycle, right? Because this sounds very woo-woo, but a big pillar of Stoicism is recognizing reality for what it is, not deluding ourselves into magical thinking or visualization bullshit or I am manifesting. No, this is reality, and reality is an all right place if you learn to work with it. Because that's the thing. If you accept reality with both the good and the bad, that includes the good, right? And first of all, with Stoicism, we have to truly believe happiness is within our power. Oh, but that's not reality. It is, according to Stoic philosophy. Be it resolved that our happiness is fully within our power. And that happiness comes through virtue. And believe it or not, that's true. When I stepped back from achievement-based thinking, the idea that, oh, if I go out and achieve a whole bunch of stuff, then I'll be happy. I was finally happy. And some people say, well, you've accomplished a fair number of things in your life. I don't know if that's really fair, but when I was measuring myself against my achievement, I wasn't happy. I was fucking miserable. And the more achievements I racked up, the more unhappy it was because it wasn't enough. And it's like, why wasn't it enough? Well, part of it is I was working with a bunch of scumbags. And I was stuck being at the mercy of things that I knew were wrong and feeling powerless to prevent the things I saw that I thought were wrong. And it really ate at me that I saw things that were wrong and didn't do anything about it. And people can say, oh, well, that's, you couldn't do anything. And that's true sometimes. Like sometimes we are powerless. But I had more power than I thought I did. But that was because I wasn't accepting that power. I wasn't wielding that power because I didn't like the consequences of owning it. Like, yeah, I lost opportunities, but were they really opportunities? Is working with unethical people really an opportunity? And that's, it starts to cycle, and that's what I say. I'm not going to be able to explain Stoicism in 20 minutes. But the virtues of Stoicism are, it sounds like a pretty boring life, but hear me out, right? It's prudence, justice, courage, moderation, right? Stuff like that. Those are good. Foolishness, injustice, selfishness, those are bad. right? Negative selfishness, right? They didn't put a moral charge on things like beauty, wealth, reputation. And those are big things to let go of because you can't control them, right? Similarly, pain does not have a moral charge. Something being ugly or you finding someone ugly, right? Someone's social class. These are not moral transgressions. And this, I mean, I think of this every time you see these guys spit at a video game. She's ugly. Like, they're offended by the ugliness of this not ugly character. And it's like, oh, somebody is putting a moral charge on physical attractiveness. That is a great way to be miserable because beauty fades, folks. You know, you see people like, you know, Elon Musk, who personally, I think he looked better before the hair plugs and the jaw implant. Now he looks like this all the time, right? Like something's going on there. But, and you know, if his hairline made him happier, okay? But see, the idea of changing your appearance making you happier by Stoic philosophical standards means you're putting beauty as a virtue, because happiness only comes through virtue. And that's where it's going to steal you wrong, according to Stoic philosophy, right? Because beauty does not have moral weight. Sure, beauty's nice to look at. It's hedonistically pleasurable, but it's not going to give you fulfillment. How many wives has Elon Musk had? There you go. So that's the basics. So you can go, I don't agree with it, and that's fine, right? Does beauty really make your life better? Not really. It can be temporary, like, oh, that's nice to look at. But, I mean, my idea of what's nice to look at are eldritch horrors. So, beauty is truly in the eyes of the beholder. It's subjective. And subjectivity is not reality. It is in our control. And that the idea of pain being fleeting and that idea of enduring pain becoming the center of what people believe Stoicism to be is something of an inaccuracy as far as my understanding of Stoicism. The idea for me of Stoicism is that pain is temporary. So, oh God, last 2-3 weeks, it's been a lot of this hurts now, it won't hurt forever. This hurts now, it won't hurt forever. You're acknowledging the hurt. You're acknowledging the temporary nature of the hurt. You're not hurting. But the hurt feels less bad because there's no moral charge to it. You examine the behaviors connected to the hurt as virtuous or not virtuous on their own merits. Not, this was a bad thing because I got hurt. Because if you're just running around trying to avoid hurt and that's how you're setting your morality, you're going to be miserable. This is obviously not the colloquial definition of Stoicism, which is never show emotion, right? It's very complicated, right? Stoicism has this whole thing of even physical health is not moral virtue. Some people are born with diseases, right? And there's a lot of authoritarian worldviews that use, you know, the eugenics argument of if you have these healthy, fit, you are clearly better, right? No, people can have great minds and faulty bodies. And I may be a little biased on that one, but you know what I mean? um, redefining our relationship to beauty, redefining what is beautiful. This is all part of it. But you feel a full range of emotions when you practice Stoicism. You just recognize that every one of those temporary hedonistic feelings is fleeting. It'll come, it'll go, the good and the bad. That sense of purpose, that sense of fulfillment, that for me, it's when a client has a breakthrough. It's like that's real and that's meaningful and that's fulfilling. I didn't do it, but I was able to experience it, right? I was able to walk with them and give them support until they could do it. That is the best damn feeling in the world. And there was one last week where the week before, all I could do was listen. It was just the person was being treated really unfairly. And there was no way to sugarcoat it. There was no look on the bright side. There was no reframing of thoughts. I just had to say, yeah, it sucks. And I can understand why you're frustrated. I'm frustrated for you. Like, this is a really tough one. But the next week, there was a breakthrough. And things improved in a meaningful way that was going to hold, right? Because this person advocated for themselves. They did it. Nobody did it for them. Nobody had to sweep in and save them. They just did it. And it was so good. And that, okay, they'll have bad weeks and good weeks going forward, but that is real. That is being alive. That is being human. That is eudaimonia. There's no substitute for that. And you need the tough times before you hit that, life makes sense for a second. Things feel fair, right? The good guys won. And part of that is letting people be there for you, which is not what colloquial Stoicism claims as well either. Like, the colloquial version of Stoicism comes from like Westerns. And this idea that, frontier life was really hard. There weren't that many women. It was all about chasing wealth and land and all that stuff. And it borrowed from the sort of delayed gratification of, I'm going to do here and I'm going to literally stake my claim and I'm going to build something here and then I'll have the pleasures of life later. But a lot of those guys never got it. And so that they created this nobility in the solitude, the jumping from town to town, the lone horseman. And like there's an example of putting a moral charge on things that don't. There's no moral charge on loneliness. You feel it. It doesn't mean you did something to deserve it. It doesn't mean God hates you or anything like that. It just is. There might be things around it that you could be doing better, but loneliness in and of itself, how do I get less lonely? Well, I find people who appreciate me and share my values. Well, how do I do that? I live in accordance with my values. There you are. That's Stoicism. I can control living in accordance with my values, so I will meet and connect with people who also similarly live in accordance with their values. And so we can discuss, because everything is based on values and integrity and being consistent with that, not denying our feelings and being a walled off island, right? And I know I've spent a lot on the Greek version of Stoicism, and not a lot on the colloquial version of Stoicism, but the colloquial version of Stoicism is sort of a contextual thing. We understand what it means based on the context it's used on. I tried to look up a definition for colloquial Stoicism, and it's basically not feeling emotions, but that's it. Obviously, this is much more in-depth, and this just scratched the surface. Like somebody will like leave a comment, no, you're wrong. I said I wasn't going to be able to get through it in 20 minutes, right? Somebody asked, what's the difference? And TLDR, Stoicism, the Greek philosophical movement, is a very complex but very codified concept of happiness being possible, and happiness and fulfillment is the end we're trying to reach, not just temporary fleeting pleasure of the senses, a real sense of a life well lived. And we do that through living life well, through virtuous living. And all this other stuff, all the bumps along the way, feelings are feedback. Feelings are not ethics. Feelings are not virtues. Feelings are feedback. Physical pain is feedback. Exhaustion is feedback. You don't deserve to be tired. You don't deserve to be hungry. You don't deserve to be sad. They are not virtues in and of themselves. Don't get them confused. That's Stoicism. This other thing is practically the opposite. Okay? Okay. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who use it who can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. So other people can like have somebody walking next to them while they figure out their values and, you know, get that fulfilling life. Until then, thanks for watching and be well.